So what's really happening now is that if you look at 4G deployments, you have two options. Fiber, if it's easy to deploy, or high-capacity wireless. And in order to do that, you typically need to move to the higher frequency bands where you have plenty of spectrum, so you can do very, very high-speed digital circuits. Copper used to be a very good solution as long as you needed a few megabits, especially in the form of DSL or T1s or E1s. But as we move into the new brave world of 4G, and people are looking for hundreds of megabits or even gigabits, copper is running out of juice. So what's really happening now is that if you look at 4G deployments, you have two options. Fiber, if it's easy to deploy, or high-capacity wireless. And in order to do that, you typically need to move to the higher frequency bands where you have plenty of spectrum.
As we move into higher data rates and more smartphones and video applications, the need for robust backhaul has certainly escalated. And we have, we've seen the vendor community step up and develop the ability to carry different protocols, higher capacities into the gigabit range. From our perspective, we're looking at a whole variety of applications that may be a mixture match of different technologies, but you'd have to conclude that no one technology fits all, but it is very much application dependent, what the customer wants to do in terms of services they want to carry and the amount of throughput they have to contend with.
The cost per megabit mile has really come down. The cost of the hardware has really come down. What I mentioned earlier about the multiple interfaces on single radio systems means that a service provider can standardize on just one or two radio systems to get all of the interfaces that they need. You mentioned throughput. The capacities and throughputs of radio systems have really gone up with some newer technologies that allow you to combine RF channels and things of that nature. So we have radio systems at Proxim that go to about 320 megabits per second full duplex. Certainly Bridgewave has the gigabit products for shorter distances. Another thing that really helps also is that the radio systems have become much more easy to operate and troubleshoot. We're all putting very intuitive graphical user interfaces in these radios that make it very easy to troubleshoot.
The rural carriers are an interesting bunch in as much as they have challenges in terms of distances and densities that they're trying to cover. And yet, because they, especially the independent telephone companies that are moving into wireless, or wireless operators that have a close association with some of these independent telephone companies, they have access to wired facilities. But by and large, what we're seeing is that as they build out licenses that they've won in recent spectrum auctions, 700 megahertz, AWS, where they're deploying really these frequencies as extensions of the wired network in particular, we're seeing more interest in some kind of microwave backhaul just because of the distances involved.
What's different about rural providers, and then believe it or not, many of them use unlicensed microwave as opposed to licensed microwave. So it's not used that often in more populated areas, but certainly in rural areas, even unlicensed microwave is an option, and that can be very cost effective because you can use smaller antennas. It's very, very quick to deploy. Obviously, you can deploy it in days. And you can always upgrade that to licensed if you need it as well.
I'm Amire. In your opinion, have the backhaul challenges been solved, and yes or no?
I think, as an iPhone user, I think the answer is no. I think Mike is right that the technology is actually becoming available to solve the problem, but the carriers are just starting to adopt some of the new creative and emerging solutions. So the technology is available. The carriers need to start using it. And if the capacity continues to double every year, it will continue to be a challenge. But it's technically feasible, but not done yet.